So good morning, everybody. Um, First of all, no, I'd like to greet everyone from the Bureau of Elementary Education. You know, they have worked so hard to make things happen, and the things that I asked them to make happen, are huge things, huge things, and um, and all of this in service of the Filipino learner. No? And I am sincerely grateful that you are all here to participate in that and to help us continue to upgrade the quality of education. I keep on telling Ma'am Malin that if we don't work on improving the quality of elementary education, we are not going to get our children to qualify for senior high school. And I think that there is no other way to say it but that way. That the quality of elementary education will definitely predict the participation in secondary education, particularly senior high school. I think that there is nothing more serious than that. The, we studied the data of grades of kinder to grade 3. We looked at the data of grades 4 to 6. We looked at participation. We looked at the NAT, we looked at the SREA, we looked at the EGRA, we looked at the EGMA. And we really need to work on a lot of things so that we level up our students and our teachers. In the work of K12, it's been a huge work. I also tell Ma'am Malin very often that I don't think anybody has worked this hard since the institution of the Department of Education. This reform, I think, is the biggest reform since the 1950s. And to be able to participate in this reform is not only an honor, but it is also a challenge. And I think that it's a challenge that a lot of us have embraced, a lot of us have committed to. And if only for that, everyone in this room is a hero. So thank you, everybody, for joining and participating. My task for the morning is to show you where K12 is. Last year, we had a video explaining the curriculum and explaining where we would take it further in the next year. This is essentially the report of programs and projects to you, as well as some other aspects of K12 that we've also shared with you through Speakers Bureau or through the training of implementation or the working on implementation plans for senior high school. This is where we're coming from. This is where we are all latched onto. This is the big picture of the K-12 curriculum of the basic education program of the Department of Education. Elementary is from kinder to grade 6. Junior high school is from 7 to 10. We emphasize that we maintain the exploratory TLE for grade 7 and 8 for most schools. And then we move on to specialized TLE for grades 9 and 10. For senior high school, we have core subjects, and then we have 4 tracks. Under the 4 tracks are academic track, tech voc track, sports track, and arts and design track. If you remember last year, our track subjects had 2 parts. The first part is the specialized track subjects that are unique to the track. For example, if you're in HE, then it would be tourism or housekeeping or food and beverages, or it would be handicraft. Then we had contextualized track subjects, if you remember. After meetings with the Commission on Higher Education, we've decided to simplify the word contextualize to make it more understandable to the public, and we call it applied track subjects. We also did a little simplification of the names of the courses, but essentially the course descriptions as well as the curriculum guides are the same. Like the contextualized track subjects, you still learn those subjects within the context of the specialization. So if it's, for example, if it's STEM, then the English for STEM would be necessary for report writing, for writing research abstracts, for lab reports. If it were a contextualized subject, for example, or an applied subject, let's say for sports, then it would be more on giving instructions for body mass index measurement, or for giving instructions on exercise and the like. So though it remains to be an English subject, then it is still contextualized within what the student is supposed to learn. And this makes the English subject more relevant, rather than just learning again what they have already learned before in grades 7 to 10, like grammar and writing and all that. This one is directed writing, or focused writing, or focused discourse. Our duty as a department is to provide access to quality education. And that quality must also be a descriptor of the way we govern education. The effort to provide quality education to children is very important, because it is one of the things that will keep them in school. Irrelevant education or meaningless education will just drive children away. And I think that it's very important for us to remember that children have their own motivations to come to school, and these motivations must be respected. For example, we may have a wonderful curriculum, but the way we administer it is not conducive to both teachers and learners. If we administer it, but it is not the way we planned it, then what we will need to make sure of is that we have the right people to do the right things. In governance of education, it's important to place the right teacher teaching the right subject. The simple matter of school governance. And this is very difficult when we go up the years and we go, for example, to science and physics, because there are fewer and fewer majors of physics, for example. So the spiraling of the curriculum is actually a good response to that, because in that way you develop more expertise across more science teachers so they can teach a subject matter better. In programs and projects, our goal is that any program, any subject, any piece of paper, any material, any learning module, textbook that a child and teacher has access to must be of quality. And this is very hard work. Later, I will show you the process that is followed. A process that is extant at the moment, that is existing at the moment, that needs a little bit of thinking and reworking. But at the moment, there is a quality process that is being followed for that. It goes the same way for quality of training programs. Every year since grade 7 started, I've had the chance to go around, visit training programs, and whenever I do that, the organizers, they think I am going to sit in the session. I do that also. I sit in the session, I listen to the facilitator, I listen to the input, but then I also go to the dormitory, then I look at the toilets, and I look at the bathrooms, and I see whether our teachers are being treated well. I think that one of the things that we have to remember is quality is made up of many things. It's not just the program itself. It's also what we give them, where we ask them to stay. I've seen teachers being crammed into small rooms as if they were sardines in a can. And this bothers me very much, because we mustn't treat our colleagues that way. And I think that from the field, it is a very important thing for us to remember that the way we treat our fellow teachers is the way they will treat our children. And if it's possible for us to level up the way we treat our teachers during training sessions, then I think it will be a happier place, a happier training program. And if you could please ensure that, then I think we would have done half of the work already. We also have to remember that everything is tempered by resource. What we can provide is tempered by what we can afford. And I think this is something that has to be understood. The important thing is, however, is what we can afford goes to those we are training. It doesn't go to anything else except those that they need to have. And to be able to provide this access to quality training programs there must be people in the division, in the regions, who are able to govern quality training programs, are organized, can fix things, and I think this is very important. And for me, even if this is the articulation of the major final output of DepEd in terms of learning, these three are applicable to all aspects of our job in education. K-3, or kindergarten to grade 3, what we've done is we've tried to ensure that basic literacy and numeracy competencies are learned through the use of the mother tongue. This is the focal objective of K-3. In other words, we are preparing them to learn and to learn by themselves. So in programs and projects, what we've done is we've looked at our work of curriculum and we've divided it into components. So there are components on curriculum, learning materials and teacher's guides, teacher training, assessment. There are more components. No, there are more components in our roadmaps because every program in programs and projects has a 3-year roadmap. So we know where we're taking the program. So for example, for curriculum, we need now to go back to the curriculum because now is the 3rd year. We're implementing grade 3. So now it's time to go back to the K-3 curriculum, weave it in better, make sure that kindergarten strengths such as unstructured play, free time for play, a little bit of rest time is built in to grades 1 to 3. So that early grades education is truly early grades education for young children. We don't formalize early grades too early. We also want to be able to make sure that the language development of children is guided properly so that from mother tongue to Filipino to English, these things bridge properly and that we develop comprehension in all of the three. A week ago or 2 weeks ago, we've already administered the language assessment for primary grades. It has a terrible name. It has LAPG. We have to think of a nicer name. We've administered LAPG, and LAPG is completely hinged on the curriculum. Every item in that assessment is traceable to the K-3 curriculum. And there's no item there that you cannot codify. What else do we need to do? We've done teacher training for early literacy, numeracy, early language, literacy, and numeracy training for regions, all regions, batch 1. Presently, batch 2 is going through the training. It's an 11-day program. And I need to explain to you why we are investing so much. We studied the data of the NAT, and we found that the scores on the NAT grade 3, assuming that the NAT scores are honest and true, that the scores are spread out. You have schools that are performing very well, and that you have schools that are scoring very low. So what we've done is we've selected 100 of the lowest performing schools in every region. And we will focus teacher intervention in those 100 schools in the next year so that we lift the bottom of the NAT. By lifting the bottom of the NAT, by paying attention to the areas that need the most attention, I hope that we will be able to create a bottom-up work, a bottom-up synergy of improvement of education at K-3. Rather than a top-down, always working with pilot schools, always working with central schools. Now we do it the other way around. We push from the bottom. And by pushing from the bottom, I think what we will be able to do is to create strengths in areas that normally have not been reached by teacher training, perhaps, or enough supervision. Maybe because they're very far or remote. Or maybe because their teachers are always changing because they're multi-grade schools. Maybe, we don't know. We do notice, however, that we also need to strengthen the capabilities of those who provide technical assistance to schools. so that supervisors and subject specialists are better able to respond to the needs of teachers in the field. For grades 4 to 6, again, using the same kind of template, we've already done some work on refining the guidelines for special science elementary schools. We've done a lot of meetings and a lot of convergence meetings between the science folks and the giftedness folks, so that the special science programs and the schools for children who are gifted become merged into one program, so that we can focus our resources particularly on children who are very good in the sciences and the maths. We also want to enhance the math and science curriculum through the K12 program. There is no specific intervention on creating only science and math strengths. What we want to do is to create strong elementary schools. We need strong elementary schools for everyone, not just for the bright kids, but for everyone. And so, by strengthening math and science in schools, we expect that these are given to all children. We've also developed the grades 4 learning materials, and we've also called for the textbooks for grades 5 and 6. We called for the textbooks for grades 5 and 6 from private providers or private publishers as early as last year. Within the month, we are going to have the guidelines for evaluating these submitted textbooks approved through the government procurement process. And once that's done, we can actually release the final call for grades 5 and 6 textbooks. But as we speak, we've already done all the orientation requirements for publishers so they can begin their work on developing grades 5 and 6 textbooks. Just as information for everybody, we're not calling for grade 5 science and grade 6 science. We're calling for grades 5 and 6 science. In other words, we're asking for a series. We're not asking for a different publisher for every grade level. The reason we're asking for a series is that children need to learn it continuously. And this call is open to anyone. It doesn't have to be a stock profit corporation. It can be a non-stock profit corporation that will respond to the textbook call. We've also done the planning for teacher training, and we've developed two sets of tests for admissions for grades math and science for incoming grade 4 students. What we're trying to do for teacher training for grades 4 and 6 and for K to 6 particularly is to bring the K12 training from the top to the schools. And we do that here. We start here, and then you train others, and then others train others. They call that cascade. I call that echo. To make sure that that echo is so loud until the end of the line is very difficult. Dito, the echo can be very loud. But you know how echoes are. The farther they are from the source, the softer the echo is. Baka mamaya, pagdating ng mass training ng teachers, wala nang sound yung echo. And I think it's something that we have to ensure. That the teachers actually hear what we're talking about. Hear and see. We don't read PowerPoints to them, right? We have session guides that will allow us to engage, that will allow us to get them to engage, so that the training programs are participative. I was smiling when Angel said, that is our very short opening program. That is my appeal to you all. Shorten the burloloy. Go straight to the substance. Enough cheering and singing and dancing. Go straight to the substance. Go straight to the training. Because I've gone through all these programs, and I've seen how many motivation sessions there are. And time is wasted, frankly. Time is wasted on so many of these rather than talking about the LM and the TG and how to teach it. My request to all of you is to keep your eye on the ball. Keep your eye on what the job is. We want them happy, but we want them working happily. Not just happy. Okay? So please, if you can keep to that, then we would have done a good service for our teachers. We're aiming to guarantee that the learning competencies are further enhanced in the context of more varied opportunities so that they can apply their learning in different content areas. So we've done a review of the special curricula. Because these are 7 to 10 matters, I'm sure you are aware that in high school they have special programs for the arts, special programs for sports, for foreign languages, for journalism, and of course for science. What we've done is we've done a review of these, and we're trying to work out how do we make this happen in all high schools, so that all high schools have interest programs for adolescents. You know how adolescents are, diba? In the next slide, these interest programs help children who have a different interests or different talent. What we're trying to do is to make that more accessible to all junior high school students. At the moment, the kids who are in science are also more likely to be the kids in arts and more likely to be the kids in foreign language. So what happens is that we focus these special programs on a very elite group of kids. What we want to do is to continue that, but open access to it. You know, adolescent studies in education show that if children are enjoying or excelling in sports, it is more likely that they will participate in other things because they have something happy in them. They feel confident, they feel accomplished, and they can bring that to other subject areas. It's not the other way around, that you have to be good academically before you can have access to sport. It's actually, it goes both ways. That sometimes those who are very good in art will participate more in math because they have something to go for them, something that is positive for them. And how we can scale this up so that all high schools have an interest program in place is being studied by the Bureau of Secondary Education. We also need to keep adolescents busy. Because if adolescents are not busy, they do all sorts of things that parents are not happy about and principals are not happy about. So I think by keeping adolescents busy with good programs, then we would have less problems with delinquency, we will have less problems with truancy, but actually, we will have a more vibrant school with more children participating. The other day, we were talking about how children who were fielded for contests missed classes in other subjects. And when they miss classes in other subjects, what happens is they get low marks, even failing marks in those subjects. So the child who is being fielded, for example, in painting contests, is getting penalized in math, English, Filipino, because he has to skip class. I think that this is something we really need to think about. Though it's nice to have contests every now and then, the holistic development of the adolescent and the child is of more importance than a contest. And I think we need to be able to temper how we offer these things to our schools and our children so that we don't put our children at a disadvantage. I think that in the offering of special programs for children, we need to sign up a contract of some sort. That if you can play football, you must do all your ACADS. But you can play football. So there has to be a contract between the school, the parent, and the child, so that we don't lose focus on everything else that the child needs to learn. If we look at the next slide, for these special programs. And I think this is important for you to know. Because, yung elementary education is like the foundation. It's a foundation of everything beyond elementary. And if children don't learn their maths, their English, their Filipino, their AP, their sport, their health, their music, their art, if they don't learn all of these things in elementary, how can they develop or even investigate interests in junior high? So the continuum of the developmental continuum of education must be apparent in what we do. And this is the reason why I'm presenting this to all of you, even if this is a junior high school program. The foundations that are laid down in elementary are very important. So what have we done so far? For curriculum, we've already developed curriculum guides for these special programs. We're starting to validate some of the LMs and TGs. There are some questions on curriculum and LMs and TGs in terms of science high schools and junior high school and senior high school that needs ironing out. We need to do some teacher training on the upcoming subjects on Research 1, and we need to do some supervisors training so that we develop good science education supervisors. If we provide interest programs in junior high schools, then children will be able to dabble in one thing or another. And then they will be able to determine what are they good at, what do they want to do, and why do they want to do it. And therefore, it will allow homeroom advisors, career guidance teachers, or career guidance advocates to be able to help children at the point of grade 9 to select what might be a good senior high school track for the child. And I think this is, again, very important. We are growing up the special programs in junior high school so that we'll grow them up so that more children have access to them, so that they can make better decisions for themselves when they go to senior high. We're doing the same for TechVoc. We're doing the curriculum review. All of TechVoc in DepEd is now NC compliant or TESDA compliant. Everything. There are only 4 subjects that are not TESDA compliant because TESDA doesn't have them. That would be all the handicraft courses. May woodcraft, papercraft, yung mga ganyan. All of these handicrafts don't have a national competency exam in TESDA. But everything else is TESDA compliant. So everything from grade 7 to grade 12 that has anything to do with TVL has been designed to be consistent with the training regulations of TESDA. And I think this is very important. The other thing that is nice is that the STVEP schools are also migrating to the curriculum guide articulation of their courses. And soon, we will add another 29 courses into our menu of TechVoc courses, courtesy of the hard work of those who are in STVEP. The special programs for foreign languages is very tricky because this is really done with embassies. And we really can't do this for all schools because it will be very difficult to find teachers in the Philippines who can speak German, French, Mandarin, Japanese, and Spanish. The biggest number we have is Spanish. Also, maybe because it's the easiest, no? It's the easiest to learn for Filipinos. And the history between Spain and the Philippines is really tight, no, and long. So we're really thinking how this positions in junior and senior high school at the moment. But what is nice is that the program is continuing. We actually have teachers who are very good at teaching these languages. As a matter of fact, I visited a few schools that are teaching these, but I don't speak any of these languages. So as far as I'm concerned, they were all very good. but there was quite a good interaction. The children were also speaking in the language. I just don't know how good they were in that language, but the fact is they were talking, and they were conversing, and there was interaction. And again, this is very important, I think, because for senior high school, one of the options we have will be for BPO industries, and that premium on foreign language is actually very high in those industries. All right. So those are the curricular programs we're looking at. We also have done work on inclusion programs. And I think these two are most particularly relevant to elementary education. There's a way of looking at inclusion. The default way is to look at it from a SPED point of view. We include children with special educational needs, like the blind, the hearing impaired, or the deaf, children who have learning difficulties, the ones who have intellectual disability. These are children who already bring with them some form of difference that impacts on their learning. That's one point of view. The other point of view is to look at all our programs to be inclusive. And this means to include children from indigenous peoples' communities, children from different religions and cultures, and as well as children who have special needs. In special education, I'm happy to report to you that we have already combined forces so that the Bureau of Elementary, the Bureau of Secondary, and the Bureau of Alternative Learning Systems already meets together as far as special ed is concerned. And this hopefully will create more cohesive programs that follow the developmental progression of a child. We've also pushed for assessment of SPED in the early grades. At the moment, the assessment of SPED is disability specific. For example, if you suspect a child has autism, you follow a different test or checklist. If you suspect that the child has intellectual disability, you follow a different checklist. What we're doing is to create, from these many tests that are available, one test. One test that will rule them all, or one test that will lead to the next. And this would be a multi-factored assessment. It's the first level assessment. And based on that assessment, you can decide which of the next tests to give. If we have one multi-factored assessment that is validated, of course, and found to be useful through empirical data, then this is something that we should be able to provide to all 38,000 schools in the Philippines at the elementary level. Because there are more than 38,000 schools. And if you think about the SPED centers that we only have about 400 to 500 SPED centers. So what's 500 SPED centers in comparison to 38,000 schools? What happens to the special needs children in those other 37,500 schools? Who gives them an assessment? And who provides for them intervention? By providing a multi-factored assessment for special needs at the elementary level, we should be able to have a tool that is useful from K to 6, not just for K or 1. Because at the moment, we just have an early grades checklist, early childhood care and development checklist. We need to bring that up. We bring that up to grade 6. And I think that is really, if that happens, then we will be more responsive to children with special needs. Because at least we'll know where they are. We'll finally have a statistic of how many kids there really are out there, because the Philippines doesn't have a statistic on special needs at all. And I think that multi-factored assessment tool, if available even at the district level, will already help so many children and families. The second level of inclusion programs are multi-grade programs. What we've done so far is we've conducted a consultative and multi-grade policy analysis workshop. Based on that, we've done some revision on the existing policy guidelines or implementation guidelines of multi-grade education. We need to really think about this, because as we go with K12, and there are many remote schools, we might have to think about multi-level high schools. because those high schools will have very small populations. And it's not going to be cost effective to field in the regular number of high school teachers in a remote area. So what we might need to think about is how do we do multi-level high schools? There's actually one operating in Davao, and he's very excited to start a multi-level senior high school. Ay ko 2 levels lang naman yun, di ba? 11 and 12. But he's excited to do that because he feels that he can, the principal feels that he can actually create the whole K12 program even in a small place. The aim is to issue the harmonized guidelines on MG schools very soon. We need to go through, we've established the process of how to look at these guidelines. Before, what would be done is to have a guideline, then issue an addendum, then issue another addendum until you don't know anymore what the original set of guidelines were. What we're trying to do now is to pick all of those, study them, repeal them, and issue a new one. But until a new one is ready, we're not repealing anything. These harmonized guidelines should allow more children in the peripheries to access schools and access programs for them. And we're trying to put together all sorts, the ADM, the ALS, the formal school, all of them together, depending on what the school requires, so that it can deliver its mandate to children and communities. In Indigenous people's education, we've had 2 landmark DepEd orders, care of the IPSEO. We have issued the guidelines on the conduct of activities and the use of materials involving Indigenous people's cultures. This is landmark because it actually tells us how to use these materials. Kasi hindi naman po yan pang museum, living yan eh. They are alive, our indigenous peoples. They're not artifacts, right? And so we need to be able to work on that. Then second, we've also issued the guidelines on the recognition of private learning institutions serving indigenous peoples. For example, Brother Armin has already released permits to operate 2 small schools serving indigenous peoples, and actually has revised those many requirements that have to do with putting up a school. Because what's been happening over the years is that even if the school is in the top of the mountain, we are asking them to produce a certificate of land title, ownership, or use of rock. We ask them to produce for us ownership or a Securities and Exchange Commission incorporation papers and all of that. Or we're even asking them to have teachers who have the LET and so on. Sometimes it's very difficult to convince teachers to have the LET to teach up the mountain. And once we enforce these many policies that are impossible to meet, we remove education from indigenous people's communities. So, by working on these guidelines, the IPSEO has actually found a way to provide recognition to these schools or permits to these schools so that the children there actually earn credits. They don't need anymore to take the PEPT or the ANE. The other intervention that is important for inclusion is that we work with regions and divisions. There are 100 divisions every year that IPSEO works with, so that we work with those supervisors who are supposed to work with indigenous peoples. And we help them in how to engage them, how to understand the culture, how to speak with them, how to talk to elders, and all of that, so that we are more equipped as a service department to work with different kinds of people. There are more things to be done. We're trying to map out all the schools. Where are the schools for indigenous peoples? The funny thing, it's very difficult because we don't know where they are. We know where DepEd schools are and which DepEd schools work with indigenous peoples. But we don't know where private schools are that actually serve indigenous peoples. And so that's part of the work. We've also done work on Muslim education, and we work very closely with DepEd ARM on this. We've done, again, a policy analysis workshop, and they have a roadmap for Muslim education until 2015. So the primary task of that office is to write that roadmap for the next 5 years in Arabic language and Islamic values, who look at it from a secular standpoint. Remember that we are a secular institution, and we're not really teaching religion in school. And to be able to ensure that we are working on Alive properly, we need to develop a group of people who can actually read, write, speak, and listen to Arabic, and also understand the value system of the Islamic studies. And of course, ALS. What have we done to make sure that ALS is compliant with K-12? That is the main question of everybody. And I think that those of you who have been walking the journey with us for the last few years know that our curriculum looks like this. Our curriculum has, syempre may standards yan before this, but we have learning competencies. We've coded all the competencies, and we've found the learning materials that correspond with the competencies, and we've tagged the learning materials. The good news is the National Science Technology Instrumentation Center, which also has equipment for science and math teaching, they've also tagged their own equipment. They've tagged their equipment. We're putting that up online very soon. We're also producing videos on those instruments so that teachers can just look at the video on YouTube so that they will know how to maintain and syempre use those equipment. The ALS is on the other side of the frame. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to match the competencies articulated in the ALS curriculum and find their partner or equivalent in the K-12 curriculum. Syempre, we don't expect 100% correspondence, di ba? We don't expect one-to-one correspondence, but we need to be able to determine until where are they consistent. At the moment, we are confident that ALS covers all of K-6. The question is how much of junior high? The other question is, if they are not congruent 100%, how do we measure indigenous knowledge, community knowledge, and prior learning so that we can give them equivalencies? Because if we don't do that, then we might as well tell them, go to formal school. We need to be able to recognize what learnings they have had from their communities and from their work that we can actually accredit as part of K-12. The next slide shows more of the same. But the interesting thing is they also are able to find some of their content in learning materials. So what we have in ALS is a curriculum as articulated, and then they have learning materials. Sometimes what they teach in the learning material is not stated in their curriculum as a competency. So we are deriving those also. The main point of the matter is we don't force only one system. We look for it. We look for the good things DepEd has. And we are trying to put them together so that we can have a formal and non-formal K-12 system existing together. In the work of K-12, this has been one of the biggest challenges we have faced. Everybody probably in this room, particularly in the bureaus, know how difficult this journey has been. Creating learner materials and teachers' guides for our schools has changed the way K-12 or basic education is implemented. For many, many years, we called for textbook submissions from private publishers. And by law, DepEd cannot make textbooks. But we're not making any textbooks. We're making learning materials and teachers' guides. Why do we do that? Because there is a huge possibility that when you make a textbook call, nobody will qualify for the textbook call. Sometimes, as a matter of fact, one of the saddest things I learned is that we haven't had a new science textbook for grade 4 in 10 years. what this group is going to teach other teachers with, the grade 4 science, LM, and TG, is the first new thing in 10 years. And that is how important it is. And that is why it's very important to ensure its quality. We have articulated the goals for the learners' materials and the teacher's guides. Then we've also done a tracking system. We know what we have and what we do not have. A lot of the teachers in the field, when I talk to them, sabi nila, Ma'am, wala kaming second semester ng grades 1 and 7. Ma'am, wala kaming ganito, grade 8 English. Parang ganun. And what we've done is we've tracked what happened, it was being developed, why did it stop, and who's gonna continue it. So I think the very first thing we had to do was to take stock of what we've got so that we can fix it. So we have a table like this. We're actually creating a digital file, a digital filing system with every version. What's the plan for the future? No? Processes for the textbook call for grades 5 and 6 and grades 11 and 12 have started. In grades 5 and 6, we're talking about 16 textbooks. No? Kasi 8 subject, tama ba? 8 learning areas, then 1. This is the beauty of grades 4, 5, and 6. Because in grades 1, 2, and 3, we had to convert that to 19 languages. So that's 8 subjects times 19 times 3 grade levels. So sa totoo lang, itong grade 4, sisiw lang to. Okay? Though hindi siya feeling sisiw. Okay? Pero compared to the contextualization effort, this is actually a simpler effort. For grades 11 and 12, we need about 331 textbooks. Nabilang ko na po lahat yan at nagkaka-nightmares na ako tungkol dito. How do you prepare all these materials by 2016? So we're preparing that textbook call already. And the processes involved in the instructional materials development are already being polished. I'll walk you through it later so you know how they're done. And then we're also beginning the redevelopment of kinder, grade 1, and grade 7 materials. And then we are already talking about how to revise the guidelines for supplementary reading materials and reference materials. Because at the moment, as you all know, there is a moratorium on purchase. So what sort of revised guidelines are required so that we will once again buy supplementary reading materials? We also need to look at libraries, library hubs, and attendance services that are being planned with private sector partners. For example, DepEd has a list of supplementary materials. Ganyan kakapal yung list na yan. And from that list, that's where people buy. Or that's all you can buy from. Parang ganon. It's a menu. And my question is, why do we have the same menu for the last 5 years? Does that mean that the schools keep on buying the same things? And why do they need to buy the same things? The other thing I asked the suppliers was, can you prove to me that those things are being used? Because if those things are not being used, then the point of view of programs is not met. The point of view of programs is that whenever we buy a material, or a learning material, or a library book, it's something that children and teachers will use. If there's no proof that they use it, if there's no proof that there's a library, then where are those materials? They're probably in boxes under tables, and they're not being used. So if they're not being used, why are we going to buy? Siyempre, from the point of view of the supplier, the important thing is the sale. But from the point of view of programs, the important thing is utilization. And unless that's clear, no buying is going to happen. And I think that is very important for our work, because it's a lot of money to purchase these materials, and we need to be secure that we are purchasing properly using people's money. We have also to start creating quality teams to review textbooks. And this is what I am frightened of. Because of the huge textbook call, people will want to write textbooks. And then there will be nobody left to do evaluation. And so I think we need really to understand where is DepEd's expertise. Who can do evaluation in DepEd's name? One of my biggest problems is how are we going to review materials and curricula for maritime and aviation? Because there are groups of people who want to set up maritime senior high schools and aviation senior high schools. O, di ba? Marunong ba kayo nun? Kasi ako hindi. We also need to harmonize our systems in terms of the production of learning materials. We need to be able to see how these systems work so that we can actually finish the work on time. I think we finish the work naman eh. It's the on time that's the problem. Diba? And I think that's always because we're running after time all these years, the 4 years, we're running after time. Calling for a textbook for grades 5 and 6 is actually going to be a relief. Okay. It's also important to have buffer stocks in case there are emergencies and disasters. And we need to be able to keep those buffer stocks accessible. All right. In the next slide, you will see how we've been tracking the materials. For example, in kindergarten in 2012, we printed activity workbooks, and these are consumable. I want to know if they are really consumed. And I would like to know if they're enough. Because it's a bit thin, and it's for a whole year. And I used to teach kindergarten. I know that a workbook this thin lasts you less than 4 weeks in kindergarten. So what happens? What happens when it runs out? What do children use and what do teachers use? So we need to go through the field, talk to teachers, find out about utilization before we make a new thing. In other words, the way we're looking at this is evidence-based. It's not just from the point of view of providing, but also the point of view of use. Do they need it? Do teachers need it? Do they actually use it? And does it actually help children learn? And that last question is the core question of everything that we do. Do the things that we do, happily or painfully, do they promote child learning? So in looking at these materials, we've done a plan. This is our IM timeline. You can imagine that my brain is full of timelines. Diba? And I'm thinking, training timeline, IM timeline, TG timeline, curriculum timeline, retirement timeline, lahat. Pagkatapos nito, tapos na. Okay? So, and thinking about all these timelines and what we need to do. So what do we need for kindergarten in the next 3 years? What do we need to do for grade 1, grade 2, and all of that? And so if we can timeline everything, then we should be able to make the work manageable. Now, talking about manageable work, how is it done? The processes involved in the development and production of instructional materials in DepEd are actually made of 3 components. There is a review, there's the development, whether it is made by DepEd or it is a call for development. No, this is made by DepEd, and this is production. This is made by DepEd. Okay? We review the need, and then we match according to the learnings, the curriculum and the competencies. Is this material updated? If the answer is yes, very good. If the answer is no, we develop. So this is the process that is happening now for kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, and soon grade 3. We're looking at it. Is it consistent? If not, we develop. And then we look for off-the-shelf procurement. If you cannot buy anything off the shelf, we do in-house development. or we commission, or we do a textbook call. Next. Then the manuscripts come. You do a quality assurance process. Did it pass? If yes, very good. You procure. The problem if it doesn't. If it doesn't, it goes back to the beginning and we do a redevelopment again. You know, you guys have to give a hand to the Bureau because they go through this. They go through this and they've been going through this for 4 years, creating learning materials and teaching guides. And it's all very difficult and a very long process. Together with their partners from the field and from academe, they've produced 4 years of learning materials non-stop, while at the same time doing the training, doing all the other jobs, and doing all the other programs. If I may invite you, can you please give a clap to the Bureau? Hindi po biro yan. So pag may nagmimintas, naaasar ako. Sa totoo lang. Kasi madaling mamintas. But that process is a tough process. Detailed picture, then it will go through editing. Then you will write new materials, and then we will develop, and then we do a general review, we do a content review. There are many stages of review. There will be a language review, and after that we agree. We have to determine the number of pages so that bidding and procurement can start, and we have to stick to those number of pages. If we go beyond or below, finance is not happy. Right? Because that means paying for more or paying for less, right? And meaning less, you get less for what you pay for. And then we lay it out, we review, we input, we do a QA again. By the time it gets to my office, I do a final QA. I do a final external review. The reason is that we sign off on it. Every page we sign off on it. And a final review is always good because it gives you a third-party eye on that curriculum, on that learning material. Sometimes, these levels of review are done first within DepEd, and then done with people outside DepEd. I'm starting to question how well those people outside DepEd do the review. And I think what we need is a quality assurance process of reviewers, because nobody is reviewing the review. The only time the review is reviewed is when it is given back to the focal person, and the focal person is checking every little bit that is mentioned in the review. And that's when the focal person says, look, they missed this part, this should have been fixed. Or the focal person will say, this comment is not really helpful. Doesn't tell me what to do, how to improve the material. And so we need to lay out a better review process. You know, I come from academe. I check theses and dissertations of my students. And I don't really tell them, write it this way. I'll say, check your premises. I'll say, check your grammar. But I won't fix the grammar. In reviewing LMs and TGs, we need to actually fix the grammar, fix the content, fix the sentence, not make pintas the sentence, but actually fix it. And I think that's the point where we need to improve our process, is that we need a quality process for the review. So there is this whole process we're trying to systematize. Why do we need to keep on doing it? The reason we need to keep on doing it is that there is always a chance that the textbook call will fail. And therefore, the textbook will not happen, will not be delivered. So DepEd has to have parang a backup learning material that if the textbook doesn't get approved by procurement, or nobody meets the quality standards, we have a material we can send out to the divisions, multiply this, replicate this, print this, bind this, and send this to schools, because this will teach grade grade 4 math. Because sometimes textbook calls fail. And this is the story that we've had to unearth and we've had to figure out. And this is the story that we are now responding to. We are trying to improve the narrative of instructional materials in DepEd. We're trying to improve that system. But at the same time, we want children to have access all the time. So, though we are making textbook calls now, we're making these textbook calls very early because if they fail, we need to make. We need to make for our children. In the law that prohibits DepEd from making textbooks for itself, it does not consider the child. If that textbook call fails, what's the teacher going to use? And I think it is incumbent on DepEd to make sure we have something to use. So that's the story of learning materials. Let me tell you about senior high school. This is the general picture of senior high school. Since August, we have been doing implementation planning workshops with all regions. We've done all 17 regions. 16 regions we've done thrice. There's one region we need to go back to again. Presently, we are looking at about 1.2 to 1.6 million children going to senior high school by 2016, and the same number going to grade 12 diba, by 2017. So 2 cohorts. The DepEd will probably absorb 0.8 to 1.1 million of this number, and the non-DepEd schools will probably absorb 0.4 to 0.5 million, so that there is a shared delivery of senior high school. Presently, we seem to require about 20 to 28,000 classrooms for 2016 alone. And we need an estimated number of teachers to about 30,000 to 41,000 teachers for senior high school in 2016. Presently, the DepEd has 7,914 junior high schools. If you compare that to the 38,000 elementary schools, obviously, we need more junior high schools so that more children will finish high school. But the 7,914, of that number, actually, it's changed already, but it's about there. It's 5,216 of them will offer senior high school. This is the number that we've arrived at in terms of classrooms and inputs that are required based on student enrollment. Why are we assuming that large enrollment? The reason we're assuming that is we're thinking grade 10 finishers will go to senior high school, and then children who will finish ALS, because ALS doesn't have a senior high school equivalent yet, they will probably go to senior high school. Third, we don't know, but maybe some children in private schools may move to DepEd. And finally, people who are not doing anything but finished 4th year high school can't afford to go to college, can't afford to go to TESDA. They probably, or to TVIs, no? Not to TESDA, to the institutions. They probably will come back to senior high school and learn the skills. So we're looking at 4 groups of children or learners for which we have no numbers. Diba? We don't know how many they are. So we need to have some space for them so that if they come, we can welcome them. So even if we did not assume any dropout rate from grade 10 to grade 11. Okay. So what are the courses that will be offered? At the moment, based on the data that we gathered, and this is data gathered through the implementation workshops, in the academic track, 4,191 schools will offer ACAD track. That's about 1.1 million children, or 50.6% of our cohort. Then for TechVoc, it's 46.5%. And for arts and design, that number is very stable. It's 1.42%. So what we have is we need to really prepare for this much for 2016. But now the schools know, now divisions and regions know which schools will offer senior high school. Site validation has been done or has been ongoing. This is the fastest site validation ever in the history of DepEd. They started site validation in February. They went to these 5,000 schools. They checked the site. Is there buildable space? Are there classrooms that need to be replaced? Do they have to add a second floor? So they've started site validation. And as we speak, as far as I know, we've done about 85% of the 5,000 schools that want to set up senior high school. Actually, this week, my office has to finalize, look at the validated sites, look at the program plans for every school, match them. The ones that have plans and have space for building, we check that school name gets sent to DBM, and DBM will give us the money to build the classroom for using 2014 and 2015 money. Wala pang 2016, obviously. Diba? So we can start, and the buildings will start. We will start with the big ones because they take longer to construct. So in the office of Usec Varela, they're in charge of all these of these things. But our agreement is we begin with buildings that are large, yung mga 4 classrooms and above, because they take longer to build. Because there are some schools that only require 2 classrooms, and that will start in 2016. And of course, because everything is tempered by resource, even if a school wants 25 classrooms, it may not get 25 classrooms. Because we need to make sure classrooms are built everywhere. Cannot just have a few. The other thing that is important is to start preparing teachers. The nice thing about the implementation planning workshops I've attended is that the division superintendents and the senior high school focal persons are beginning to train their TechVoc faculty. And then the TechVoc faculty who they're training now, when senior high school opens, lipat nila sila sa senior high. And then they will hire younger and new faculty for junior high. And so they're really preparing, and it's really beautiful. It's a beautiful process. I've been so blessed to witness, no? So blessed to witness, to see how these divisions and schools and regions have been working during these implementation workshops, planning workshops for senior high. It's also full of hope, but also very realistic, knowing that, there are limits to this, limits to provision. And so how are we gonna cope with provision that is not essentially enough? The other thing that you need to know about, is the senior high school voucher program. There's a voucher program that will allow DepEd children to move to a private school or a non-DepEd school, for example, like Pisay, or let's say an SUC. Basta non-DepEd, doesn't have to be private. And there are 3 tiers of payment. Tier 1 is 22,500. Tier 2 is 20,000. Tier 3 is 17,500. So if the child will study in a tier 1 area or community, that means very expensive. The cost of public provision is 22,500 per year. So the child has a voucher. Actually, it's a digital voucher. Hindi yan isasanla, di ba? It's a digital voucher. So the child just has to be able to show na I graduated here, I want to study there. My name will go to DepEd. Parang ganon. No? And they are going to have a managing contractor for this one. If the student is from, let's say, Miriam, or School X, private school, wants to avail of a voucher, pwede rin. They get 80% of the voucher. In other words, kids from DepEd and kids from private schools can avail of a voucher, even if they were already from private schools before. And this is the first time this is ever happening in Philippine history, that a child actually has a money equivalent for education, even if he's not from DepEd. This is the cost of DepEd. This is how much we pay per child per year. Syempre, senior high school is a little bit more expensive because of all the equipment. And the faculty is a little bit more expensive also because of the core subjects and the specializations. But if the child is going to an SUC, let's say PNU will open a senior high school in its lab school, it's an SUC. The cost of the voucher is 50%. Because an SUC or an LUC is already government funded. So they don't need the entire amount. So that voucher program is very important. You need to tell everybody about it. You really do, because we've met already some partners and private people within some divisions who had no idea about the voucher. But that voucher system is very important because it gives you access to senior high school. We also have been able to issue permits for non-DepEd senior high schools. For 2015 opening and 2014 opening, 274 schools have permits. And for 2016, we have 1,116 serious applications. We have more than 4,000 emails. But some of them are just questions. These are the serious ones, completo with the requirements. And very soon, the Bureau of Secondary Education will already release the manual for granting senior high school permits, which will already be sent out to the regions. Because as per 9155, the Governance of Basic Education Act, it's really the regions that should issue permits. This slide shows you the blue dots are all the junior high schools in the Philippines. The red dots are the proposed senior high schools for 2016. Some of those red dots are already alive, no? Some of those red dots are just plans. But we already have some that are actually offering senior high school now. Siyempre, if we made another map here of elementary school, and let's say our dots are pink, then the whole Philippines would be pink, right? Kasi 38,000 schools yun. Actually, yung daycare center ng DSWD, more than 51,000. Mas marami pa sila. Now, let me give you an example from Albay, Region 5. And this is a small municipality called Tiwi. What we've done is we've asked the divisions to think about where they should set up the senior high schools. Because of resource limitations, and I don't just mean school buildings, I mean teachers as well, right, and equipment. Because of resource limitations, you cannot possibly offer senior high school everywhere. Not in 2016. Maybe later, but not in 2016. And so we asked them to compute distances, and they've been really good with it. For example, in Tiwi, they will have Joroan National High School, Joroan National High School will offer STEM and TVL. They will have 160 slots for STEM, and they will have 1,200 slots. Hindi. Total na pala to. These are totals. Okay? So, these are the totals for the entire municipality. The entire municipality will offer 160 slots of STEM, 80 slots of ABM, 80 slots of HUMS, 80 slots of GAS, 1,200 slots of TVL, and they're not going to offer arts and design and sports. Kasi the children who want to take arts and design, they will go to another place. Okay, because it's very expensive. Arts and design and sports are very expensive. So, in Joroan National High School, they will offer STEM and TVL. In Naga National High School, they will offer STEM, ABM, HUMS, GAS, and TVL. And in Tiwi Agro-Industrial School, they will only offer TVL. But they will not offer the same TVLs, right? So they will have different programs in different schools. So it's very important also to consider distances. How are children going to move around? If they live here, is it easy for them to get there where the TVL they want is available? Yes? Follow? Right. And then, of course, they also have a non-DepEd partner who will open a senior high school, and that's part of their equation. This is how we're looking at senior high school provision. Let me show you a bigger municipality, which is Daraga. Daraga will offer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 senior high schools. And because it's a tighter place, more populated, then this place needs to have some additional senior high schools that are smaller, because their problem will be buildable space. Okay? And then they also have non-DepEd partners like Pico College Incorporated, Immaculate Conception, Mary Child Science Oriented High, Science Sunshine, wow, Sunshine International School, and United Institute. In some places of the country, like South Cotabato, they're offering more than 56 senior high schools. It's a giant place, right? It's a giant division. Quezon City, for example, is still not done with its planning. The reason for that is that the buildable space issue is really a question. Where do you build in Quezon City? Where do you build in Makati? Where do you build in Mandaluyong? All the spaces that are owned by the public government, they're full. And so there's a lot of question on how that's going to happen. At the moment, I think in Quezon City, the National Housing Authority has already freed up some land for Quezon City senior high schools. All right. So my final update for you is the assessment system. So this is the approved assessment framework. And when I say approved, it's approved. Approved by Programcom, approved by Exicom, and approved by Mancom of DepEd. This is it. Okay? This is the assessment system, and we're looking at it from a developmental point of view. Kasi programs nga tayo eh. We look at it from development. So we look at it from ECCD, kinder to grade 6, junior high, senior high, and beyond DepEd. Okay? And what we've done is we've finalized the assessment framework. The curriculum exits have corresponding assessments. We've already identified possible pathways and corresponding assessments also for these pathways. We've also broken it up into formal, non-formal, special ed, and care. So I'll start with care. Care is what none of us are doing yet. We haven't really thought about how to bring education to children who are in hospitals. We really don't have, only NGOs and church-based groups and civic-oriented groups are doing these things. We haven't really thought about how to bring education to children who are in institutions. I've been to one place in Region 4A where there is a DepEd multi-grade school, 2 classrooms, in a home for children who have been sexually abused by their families. And therefore, they had to be taken away from their families. And the nuns who run it requested long ago for a school to be set up there. So I think we need to do more of this. We need to be more responsive to children who are in the periphery or children who are in the margins of society. And among those would be children who are stuck in the home because they are bedridden or they are incapable of coming to school, and also children who are sick. And this is where I think there's a huge potential for ADMs, a huge potential for ALS, so that we can bring this there, teach the people there how to use those ADMs, and hopefully the children will respond. So that's something we haven't done yet. Kumbaga, nakapark pa yan. Okay? We are working on these three at the moment: formal, non-formal, and special ed. Now, from ECCD programs, we have school entry assessments, and they are assessments, they're diagnostics, right? They are not for achievement, they are actually for getting to know more about the child. And these assessments will help us in placing children, and will help us in preparing our first lessons for them. At the end of grade 6 is an elementary exit assessment. We will think of a nice name, okay? But in the middle is grade 3. Grade 3, language and literacy assessment. I was thinking of ELA, Early Language and Literacy Assessment, kaso walang N. L na. Early Language Literacy Numeracy Assessment, something like that. It's better than LAPG. Okay? And so, I have a big problem with LAPG. Okay, so anyway, so the thing that we need to do, is to further and further localize LAPG. In the same way that we must continually localize grades K to 3. And when I say localize, we need to be able to develop in divisions capacities to contextualize learning materials. Because the kiniraya in one island is different from the kiniraya in another island. And we cannot penalize children by forcing them to learn one kiniraya, because they know different kinirayas. And I think that that kind of localization, we need to timeline that seriously. But before we do any of the materials, the first thing we do is to train the people who will localize them and work on them. It's a big thing, that contextualization, because we work with the Commission sa Wikang Filipino, we work with linguists, we work not only with teachers, because we need a standard language. Right? We don't invent the language. We don't invent the spelling system. DepEd doesn't do the grammar. It's actually linguists who do it, and then we implement it. And that in itself is another timeline. So if we have an exit assessment at grade 6, this exit assessment should serve the purpose of finding children who are good enough for science high school programs. This exit assessment should serve all those purposes. No need for additional exams. That will allow, or one assessment process, not an exam, one assessment process that will already allow us to help children find their way in junior high. At the end of grade 9, or in the middle of grade 9, we do the NCAE, which is the National Career Assessment Examination. This has been revised to be more consistent with K12, and we will continue to revise it until it is better in line or aligned with the tracks of K12. Because in the original NCAE, they weren't aligned because the curriculum wasn't done yet. Now that the curriculum is done, we can fix it so that the assessment is consistent with the curriculum. And then, at the end of grade 12, we will have an exit assessment for high school. So it's really grade 6, grade 9, grade 3, grade 6, grade 9, and grade 12. Now, how do we assess that by 2018, we will already join the TIMSS and the PISA? And we will be able to benchmark our country's educational system against the educational systems of other countries in the world, participating in the PISA. So, and this would be what I call third-party evaluations. Third-party evaluation, because all of these, we are assessing ourselves. Diba? You give your own test to your own students, you give your own test to your own teachers. We are assessing ourselves. But a good assessment is really an external assessment, a third-party assessment, and we're building that in already in system evaluation. The other set of third-party assessments are in the next slide. For the assessment of children who are exiting from academic track, of course, DepEd will have its own exit assessment. But admission to university is a third-party assessment. How many of our kids pass admissions exams to college and to universities? This would be our good barometer of how well our academic track is functioning. For TechVoc and middle skills development, actually, the third-party assessment would be the NC certificate of TESDA. That is why it's very important that now pa lang, our teachers have these NCs already. Because they will teach the students to earn those NCs. And of course, if the child is going directly to work or directly to entrepreneurship, then the exit assessment would be getting accepted in the job or setting up a successful entrepreneurship and activity or engagement. In other words, DepEd will be assessed by those who will receive our students at the end of grade 12. And that, I think, will be what's going to be most critical for us. That we are able to produce the graduates we said we would produce. Graduates who have 21st century skills, who have subject matter knowledge, and who have skills and competencies to work in the world and to work with others. If 50% of our students are going to the academic track, according to our senior high school data, 56.6, then what is the percentage who should pass academic entrance exams into colleges? We need to set a benchmark. Do we say that of the 50.6% of those who will graduate from academic track, are we going to say that at least 80% of them should pass college entrance admissions exams? If we set that as our barometer, then that is what's going to go into system evaluation. But at the moment, that is a work in progress. We haven't really finalized that. In the monitoring and evaluation of K-12, I think we really need to be able to quantify our work with the products that we produce, the products that come out of basic ed. And we need to be able to show the materials, improving quality of teachers, the improving quality of supervisors and subject specialists, the improving quality of superintendents and regional directors, and of course, the improving quality of the central office. I think that these are very important for this system to continually improve itself. In studies that look at how educational systems improve themselves, there are things that are clear or clear across nations. First, one of the first things that is common among educational systems that improve themselves is that they actually continue the training according to training needs. In other words, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of training. It's different kinds of training for different kinds of professionals. And I think this is what's very important in our endeavor today. Our training for the next summer, for this coming summer, is grade 4. All these different subjects. The session guides are prepared for you to improve, for you to help us make it better. But those session guides, they're the minimum, di ba? We don't lessen them. We make them better if we still can make them better. But we don't lessen them at all. Finally, in the next slide, is how we are going to pull together the assessment. You know, 21st century skills is a promise of the K12 curriculum. So what we actually have is, this is the curriculum, that is the assessment system. What do they have in common is 21st century skills. In the next slide, we'll show you how we're gonna do it. And this is how we're gonna do it for the grade 6 SNAT that's coming in 2 years. Diba? On this phase are the 21st century skills, information, media, technology skills, learning and innovation skills, communication skills, and life and career skills. On the top are the subject areas, and on the side are our key stages, K to 3, 4 to 6, 7 to 10, and 11 and 12. Let me give you an example. This assessment cube, I call it the assessment cube. The assessment cube will show you the intersection between three phases, among the three phases. For example, what communication skills are crucial for math at the end of grade 6? So, these communication skills, representing numbers using models, diagrams, and symbols, representing operations using models, diagrams, and symbols, displaying data, interpreting, giving descriptive information, making connections, and communicating results. These are the communication skills that are needed in math at the end of grade 6. These communication skills, how were they derived? They were derived by looking at the essential skills of every subject area as they are connected to the 21st century skills. A group of people who actually studied the curriculum and connected the learning competencies to 21st century skills. It was a massive work, again, by the specialists of the Bureau and by the NETRC, looking at how these two things intersect. This intersection is purely curriculum-based. There's no sentence here that is not in our CG. And this, therefore, will become our articulation of the curriculum, of the assessment content. So part of our NAT will be on this. Apart from operations, apart from problem solving, part of the NAT will be tapping onto these skills. Okay. We've also created the National Assessment Technical Working Group, and there are 4 sub-TWGs. System Assessment, National Assessment of Student Learning, Teachers and Supervisors Assessment, and Classroom Assessment. Classroom assessment meaning formative and summative assessment in the classroom. This is the one that we are trying our best to finish before the NTOT starts, because we would like to offer an alternative to DepEd Order 73, so that we clarify better how we will do formative and summative assessments and how we compute grades and all of that in the classroom. Last year, in our video last year on curriculum, I said that one of the things that we will work on the next year would be assessment. And I'm happy to tell you that we've been working on it, and we are trying our best to finish it so that by NTOT, we already have our assessment system. The other one is we've already gathered the National Technical Working Group and the Sub-Technical Working Groups for meetings. And we're convening again on Tuesday. Yeah, that's tomorrow. Yes, we're convening again on Tuesday, March 17, for the second meeting or the third meeting of the National Technical Working Group on Assessment. And hopefully by tomorrow, we will finalize the classroom assessment policy, which will be written out as a DepEd order and hopefully released in time for the NTOT. How were the technical working groups members chosen? I have to tell you that we chose very deliberately. We chose people who were sent on scholarship to study assessment, who had extensive training or graduate degrees on assessment. And of course, we had a representation from schools, divisions, districts, of course, and then regions and central office and external partners. This is how our assessment TWG was created. And this list of people, it's a big list of people depending on sub-TWG. This list of people have been working on the various aspects of assessment of K-12. And finally, we've had our workshops. The classroom assessment work will differentiate the assessment of K-6 from 7 to 10 to 11 and 12. We'll follow the same assessment system, but probably the weights will be different for subjects. We also need an assessment policy which teachers can understand first and foremost. We want an assessment policy that is liberating, that teachers can use in their classroom, that is not very different from what they learned from their BSE or BE Ed degrees in college, so that they can immediately apply mean median mode, and they can immediately do the computations on mean percent score and compute percentages, so that they can assess their children every day as every lesson passes. We've looked at DepEd's Order 73 of 2012, its issues. We've identified what is good so that we can make it better. We've also identified what has been very challenging for teachers so that we can revise those. Let me just bring you back to the architecture, the big picture of the K12 Philippine Basic Education Curriculum Framework. Our objective is to develop Filipinos with 21st century skills who have mastery of competencies and content in the learning areas, the traditional learning areas of education. What we've also done in addition, you know how the RBEC was articulated, it was a matrix, diba? And it's a scope and sequence of skills. What we've done is we also have that, but we've articulated a curriculum support system. What sort of teacher is needed for senior high STEM? What sort of teacher is needed for senior high TVL? What sort of teacher is needed for K-3? What sort of teacher is needed for 4 to 6 science? So we're trying to articulate these qualities of teachers more specifically. We're also trying to articulate better the materials, facilities, and equipment requirements for each key stage and if necessary for each subject. The ICT environment, I've just described to you the assessment system. We're also trying to articulate together with our colleagues from regional operations what sort of school leadership and management competencies are necessary for a senior high school to happen, for a junior high school to thrive, for a good K-6 school to happen. And what should schools divisions provide schools as technical assistance? I think that this is my next frontier. I need to warn you that in the next year, we will be working on the regional CLMDs and the division CIDs on how to provide technical assistance to schools so that schools will improve. Our interventions now is the cascading training, which we do, yung echo na sinasabi ko sa inyo kanina. But very soon, we're releasing the guidelines for learning action cells that are school-based. Some of you call it inset training, some of you call it learning quality circles, some of you call it teacher learning circles. People call it differently in different places. But we're just calling it a generic learning action cell. Bahal na kayo mag-isip ng magandang pangalan. It's a learning action cell. We'll do it from the bottom so that we give teachers and schools things to talk about, videos to watch, to study, so that they can improve themselves in the school. We give them the top-down training that we're doing from the bureaus, from central office and regions. When these two meet, the school should improve. The important thing is to move from the bottom and move from the top so that teachers and students will improve nationwide. I think that sort of work, that's our next frontier, is to help schools divisions provide better technical assistance to schools so that they don't supervise, they actually help. And finally, a clear set of guidelines on community industry relevance and partnerships. As a matter of fact, some of the guys in my office for senior high school are drafting template MOAs already for creating partnerships with industry, with LGU, with donors on the various aspects of senior high school. These template MOAs can be used for any of the levels, junior high school or elementary. And finally, as I told you earlier, we are also looking at a monitoring and evaluation system so the DepEd will know how it can continually improve itself as a learning institution, as stated in our vision, and as an institution that is dedicated to the development of the Filipino youth. There you go, everyone. That is my update on K-12 for this year. Thank you very much for listening and have a good day.